This should be a pretty quick install for zForm. The very first thing, if you haven't used Blender before, you need to do is download the .zip file that's in your add-on section for zForm, and you can place it anywhere on your computer. The next step is opening up Blender, and then going in the top left, there'll be an Edit dropdown. Click on the Edit, and then click on Preferences. Let me move the screen out a little bit. Depending on the version of Blender you're using, the UI might be a little bit different, but they should be pretty similar. And click on the add-on section in the left-hand side. Then, in the top right, there's a drop-down, and select Install from Disk. Select the version of zForm that you're downloading. In this case, it's 1.0.2. And then in the bottom right, there's an Install from Disk. Click on that. In Blender 4.2, it will automatically enable the add-on. But if you're using earlier versions of Blender, you'll need to check this on, just like that. Then you can close Preferences and check on the side panel, which you can type in N to open up the side panel, and there should be one for zForm. If the only thing you need out of the video is installing the add-on, then you're good to go. There's no need to watch the rest of the video. However, if you want to see how to use the tool, then that's what I'm going to cover for the rest of this video. As a starting point, I want to talk about the Mesh View section in the UI. There are 3 different options. You have front, side, and top, and that correlates to what's called the viewpoints in Blender if you're new to Blender, and the Mesh View is default to front view. To help explain that, let's open up an image. This image will be used to convert to a 3D mesh. I'm going to select this tiger. The first thing you'll notice is that you don't see the image, and the reason for that is when you open up Blender, it defaults to the top view. To change that, you have a few options. The first is this little gadget up here that puts the axes values. Select the -y to go to the front view. You don't actually see an image, it's just like a solid form. There are 3 different viewport shading options in the top right. The one it defaults to is the solid mode. Click on the next one to the right. This is called the preview mode, and then you'll see your image. The next thing is, depending on your image, it might be small like this here. And what I do to zoom in is hold the control and then my mouse key, and I just zoom in like that. If you prefer to work in a different viewpoint, you can change viewpoints by just typing in numbers. For example, if I wanted to go into front view, I'd type in 1. If I wanted to go in top view, I'd type in 7. If I wanted to go in side view, I'd type in 3. And then so you have these different options here. So right now we're in top view. And if I wanted to go back into front view, I'd first click on front for the mesh view, and then I'd type in 1 on my keyboard to go into front view. And then each subsequent time that you want to convert an image to a 3D mesh by clicking Apply Depth Map, it will default to whatever mesh view that you have here. The next step is importing your depth map. I'm going to select the corresponding depth map for that image. And the depth maps don't have to be in the same directory as your original image. They can be in the same directory or in different directories. For the target object, you don't have to do anything. Leave it to the default. However, if you did want to change the target object, you can do that as well. We already talked about the mesh view, so we'll skip that. The next section is mesh properties. The first one is subdivision. In a simple way, the higher the subdivision, the more detail you want in your mesh. Be careful on increasing this too much. My computer doesn't handle well anything above a 10, and a 10 is a pretty high mesh, but if you're wanting to do something for like 3D printing, then the higher subdivision is important. I typically stay within the 6 to 8 range. The next is smooth factor. I typically stay within the 1 to 2 range, and it's how smooth you want the mesh to be. You'll just want to experiment a little bit. It does depend on the image. There are some times when I have a smooth factor of 2 or 3, and other times I just want a smooth factor of 1 or even 0.5. The depth strength is how deep you want the 3D mesh to go, and I typically will use for like a character a depth strength of maybe 1 or 0.8. But if you want a full scene that goes deep, I might increase the depth strength to something like 2 or 3 or even 4. So it will depend on the image. The next is material. The metallic is like a metal, how much metal you want in your material. And I've defaulted it to 0. And for the roughness, the min and max is between 0 and 1. And IRI is the brightness of the material. Next, we want to apply the depth map. And you'll notice right away that we created the 3D mesh. The very last step is applying all modifiers. If you go to the right side, there's a little wrench, and it says modifiers. I'm going to expand this out. Click on the wrench. You'll see all 3 modifiers that are used to create the mesh, one for subdivision, displace, and smooth. When we apply all modifiers, you'll see that all of the modifiers are gone. Let's click Apply All Modifiers. Then you'll see there's no more modifiers on the right side. Let's go into edit mode by clicking Tab on your computer. In the top left, there'll be 3 different options to select vertices, edges, or faces. So right now I'm in vertices. You can see the little points. If I wanted to go into face mode, I'd click on the faces, and you'll select faces. For the most part, it's pretty clean topology. That being said, I've never tested this with other software like 3D Studio Max, but it looks pretty clean. I've also never tested this for 3D printing. To get out of edit mode, all you need to do is press Tab again. And that's about it. If you have any further questions, feel free to reach out to me on Blender Market. There's a Contact Creator button on my main homepage of my products, and I'll do my best to answer your questions and help out any way I can. All right, that's all I got.